It wasn't Newcastle's loss directly, but the torpedoing of the Centaur burned deep into the consciousness of a nation, especially for those in a seaport such as Newcastle.
I think I could have shot a Jap myself.
It was a time when what's since been called the Secret War was being waged only kilometres off our coast, with Japanese submarines inflicting heavy losses on ore and cargo ships. There were those who suffered personal grief when the Centaur went down, the friends and family of nurses, doctors and the former curry baker serving as a field ambulance officer.
Yes, I'm always thinking of him.
Dorothy Butt lost her husband Bill when the Centaur, bound to pick up wounded troops in New Guinea, was sunk off the Queensland coast. The ship went down in minutes, taking 223 people with it. A Newcastle nurse sister, Ellen Savage, was one of 64 who survived the sinking and did her best to care for the wounded left adrift.
My husband could swim. I said, it's a wonder he wasn't safe. She said, don't fill your hopes too high.
Some took the opportunity to pay solemn farewells off the coast of Newcastle. Hundreds turned out at similar ceremonies along the coast, at Caloundra and at Point Danger at Coolangatta, where permanent memorials have been built to commemorate the infamous and tragic attack.
Kostya jumped on the scales first and came in right on the required weight. His American counterpart followed soon after and surprised everyone by coming in lighter than Kostya. Both fighters underwent extensive medicals, the doctor paying particular attention to their hands. Newcastle's Craig Peavy and Casino's Justin Rousell will make up part of the undercard, and their bout is being tipped to steal the limelight. Lance Hobson, also from Newcastle, showed he hasn't lost any condition and will prove a tricky challenge for Singapore's Dean Hanif. But not all the fighters easily made their required weight. Newcastle's Paddy Martin was well over, and not even a discreetly placed towel could help him lose it. So it was into the sauna for a quick jog. 3 times he was forced to jump on the scales and head back to the dry heat. Finally, he made it. After the official niceties were over, all the fighters split for their traditional big meal of pasta. Zoo and Rousell went to a restaurant. The Corsair went to the home of his new Australian pal, Lance Hobson. By the time they all get back in the ring tonight, they could have gained more than a kilo.
He may feel more at home at the news desk, but NBN's Ray Deneen joined the thousands of volunteers helping out for McHappy Day. At McDonald's stores around the country, each Big Mac sold meant $1 for underprivileged Australian kids. At Coffs Harbour, it was NBN reporter Ian Cameron serving up a smile. Tamworth's McDonald's was given a hand from Mayor David John and country singer Jean Stafford. But you've got to feel sorry for the hungry folk at the Edgeworth branch near Newcastle. Don't give up your day job, Ray. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Promoters warned all week that if you blinked during the Kostya fight, you might just miss it. Well, less than a minute in and Larry LaCourcier was on the mat for the first time. No sooner had he stood up and Kostya did it all again. From there it was only a matter of time, and only 2 minutes 40 seconds into the first round, the lights went out for Larry. Le Corsair was out cold for about 40 seconds, but he soon recovered. However, Casino's Justin Rousell and Newcastle's Craig Peavy provided the best stoush of the night. Rousell cut Peavy very heavily in the fourth round. The Newcastle boy came out in the fifth and tried to even the score with a headbutt. The referee immediately ended the fight by disqualifying Peavy, but the drama didn't end there. Peavy refused to leave the ring. While he was arguing with officials, his family, spectators and Jeff Fennick all became involved in a fiery push and shove that had to be broken up by security guards. A rematch is expected within weeks. And Newcastle's Lance Hobson was lucky to come away with a draw from his fight against Singapore's Dean Harniff. The day started with a special stage through the car park of a local sports complex. Although it was tight, they still managed some good speeds. The rally tyres very punishing on the gravel car park. Away from the town, and Wayne Bell showed the style of the new Hyundai Lantra. Today's event is the car's debut, and Hyundai intend to make it their racing flagship. Craig Stellard in car 1 didn't stay in the lead for long. He pulled out after stripping a gearbox. Gosford's Ron Kremen withdrew his car from a race in Malaysia to try and win this event. Local highway patrol officers clocked one car at 180 kilometres an hour in the forest, and nearly all of them sitting on 50 kilometres sideways. But they were all eating the dust of local hero Warren Ridge. Ridge set a cracking pace early on and had the others chasing him. Not everyone, though, could keep up. One team pushed it to the limit, but slipped over that edge. No sooner were they over and officials had them back on their wheels and heading towards the finish line. And it doesn't matter how many times you get behind the wheel, you just never know when it's time to holler for a marshal. But that's not the way they finished up. After two separate protests, Unequalled was still the winner, and Gary Harley's tip, Bucks Pride, was moved up to second. The Quinella paid $79.50, the trifecta $1,813.80.
Last December, the Coalfields community was devastated when vandals smashed Richard, a statue of a miner that symbolised the spirit and history of the area. Distraught but not deterred, a fundraising campaign was launched to replace the mascot. $8,000 later, and with a fanfare to remember, Tom, although a little windswept, was officially welcomed to Rotary Park today.
Just as in the past, disaster struck and the people of Curry had to fight back, this happened here. They tore down our statue, they tore down our heritage, we regrouped and we put it back where it belongs.
Tom has been reinforced with steel, and while keeping tight-lipped on security measures, the town has arranged for added protection.
To most people, dolls mean fond memories of childhood times. To others, dolls are serious business. This latter group was in Barbie heaven today for the 3rd annual doll show. Dolls of all shapes and sizes graced the stands at Grafton Showground Pavilion. There was an array of displays to keep even the most cynical doll fan occupied. A porcelain doll making competition kept the crowd entertained. There are also workshops on setting dolls' sleep eyes and making those special doll hats and shoes. Proceeds from the show will go to the Showground Trust to install lighting in the Ford Pavilion.
The close-knit Coalfields community where Sandra Millwood lived had been stunned by her alleged abduction at knife point from a home as 2 young children looked on. But worse was to come.
A person was out jogging this morning and they located the car in this area and they informed us.
Police have established an extensive crime scene investigation in Scrub near the Curry Golf Club where Sandra Millwood's burned-out car was found. Her partially burnt body lay nearby, covered with branches. The exact cause of death won't be known until a post-mortem examination is carried out tomorrow.
It's one that probably be remembered a long while from the people in Curry here when you consider that there's children involved who were at the house when the mother disappeared.
Sandra Millwood's family gathered to comfort one another this morning. Her parents are making arrangements to look after her 2 children, aged 5 and 7. Speaking briefly this morning, Sandra's father said she had known her alleged attacker but had little to do with him. A 29-year-old Curry man was arrested last night and charged with kidnapping. He was interviewed throughout the day by Maitland detectives and was charged late this afternoon with murder. The man will appear in Maitland local court tomorrow. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
Charlestown started with tons of enthusiasm. Jason Edwards found plenty of open spaces but not enough backup. Charlestown's Paul Carlos gave away a penalty after hitting John Gutherson high. That seemed to rattle the Butcher boys and they couldn't maintain the drive. Over at Harker Oval, Shane Mackley went in just on half-time, but the Rosellas were still down 8-11 at the break. Curry thought they could smell a win in the air and continually pressured West's line. But it wasn't to be. West scored right on the full-time bell to win.
Migraines affect 15% of the population, 1 in 6 people. Women are more likely to suffer and the condition can be debilitating at any age, attacks common among children.
The child with severe travel sickness, the child with vomiting attacks, particularly with excitement or travel, perhaps headache with vomiting and abdominal pains, they're almost certainly migraine.
Professor Terry Holland, Director of Neurology at Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital, agrees that although there have been advances in research, it's surprising doctors still don't know exactly what causes a migraine.
We do know a lot more about it and there's a lot of work being done on it, but yes, it is surprising itself, not just in the arteries, which is the site of the pain.
A new drug, sumatriptan, marketed as Imigran, has been hailed as the long-awaited answer to a sufferer's nightmare. It's an expensive treatment. 1 tablet costs around $34. But Professor Holland is not convinced it's a panacea.
It is a very good drug, but people have got to realise it only works in 70% of people on 70% of migraines. So it's not quite the wonder drug that we really wished it to be.
Throughout this week, various support programs will be held for migraine sufferers, who along with the medical profession are still waiting for a cure.
I would suspect eventually, yes, we will know the cause, and if you know the cause, you can tailor your treatment and management to obviate the cause.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
The 3 people on board the 11-metre ketch Seven Seas were relieved to be sailing into Port Macquarie this afternoon. The skipper and crew had faced a harrowing night on board the yacht 50 kilometres off the coast. On their way from Sydney to Cairns, the ketch encountered a severe storm. Battling seas 3 to 4 metres in height, the strong winds tore to shreds the 2 mainsails. The skipper radioed the Port Macquarie base at around midnight, advising of his decision to batten down the hatches and weather out the storm.
Big winds, big seas, ripped the mainsail, dropped the boom, and then we couldn't do much because there was stuff all over the deck over the night, so we just drifted out to sea. Then when daylight came, sorted everything out and came back in, but by then we were about 30 miles out, so it took a while to get in.
The yacht was brought into Port Macquarie under motor at around 3 o'clock this afternoon. The Sea Rescue Squad placed an experienced seaman on board to assist the yacht over Port Macquarie's notorious sandbar. An ambulance was waiting for the yacht and treated the skipper, who had a dislocated shoulder. Another crewman suffered acute seasickness. In December 1989, the earthquake devastated the commercial heart of Hamilton. It also claimed lives and left scores of people injured. The tragedy which unfolded that day has left the people of Hamilton with a greater awareness of what can and does happen in an emergency. Last night, 15 people graduated from a unique first aid scheme developed by Hamilton man Bob Williams. The scheme is based on the Neighbourhood Watch program. Stickers on the outside of shops or houses indicate that someone inside knows first aid and can help anyone who is ill or suffers an injury. The group is the first to graduate from the scheme, which it's hoped will go Australia-wide. Already other hunter communities, particularly commercial centres, are showing interest.
Cricket has dominated semi-final nominations in Lismore, with Lynn Larson again the captain of Australia and Adam Gilchrist playing in the New South Wales Sheffield Shield team that was successful. Coffs Harbour's John Radford excelled in bench rest rifle shooting with 2 Australian titles. Kevin Morrison from Nambucca Heads made the country first rugby league team. Michael Eppleton won the World Bodyboarding Championship. Steve Pullen made big waves in surf lifesaving, and Daphne Shaw beat many of the men in the Jack High Lawn Bowls Championship. More semi-finalists in the NBN St George Sports Star of the Year will be announced later in the year.
The household waste recycling program will use these specially fitted bins. In these bins, residents will place newspapers in the front section, cans, plastic and glass bottles in the rear. The recycling bin will be collected together with residents' existing garbage container each fortnight. Today, BFI, the company which has won the recycling collection contract, was out delivering bins to almost 600 houses in the Peninsula Woy Woy areas. These suburbs have been selected by council to trial the recycling system during the next 2 months.
Find out any teething problems. If, for argument's sake, people can't successfully sort the paper from the other products, we may have to look at an alternative paper collection system.
If the trial's successful, 58,000 recycling bins will be delivered to houses in the Gosford area in coming months. The program proper is scheduled to begin early next year and is expected to reduce the amount of domestic waste being delivered to council tips by 30%. This reduction, Mr Benson says, will increase the longevity of already stressed rubbish tips. The recyclable waste will be collected by custom-built trucks, which have an automated system to keep the newspaper and other contents separate when emptied. The waste will then be taken to a materials recovery facility in Gosford, sorted and sold. The glass bottles, for example, going to ACR in Sydney. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Robbie McCormack couldn't stop smiling all the way home from Sydney. He was the late inclusion in the Blues squad and played a major role in his side's win. He says he wasn't quite prepared, though, for the hectic pace.
Yeah, I was struggling. I think it took me about 25-30 minutes to actually settle down, get my second wind and know what I was doing out there. I was pretty happy to give a couple of penalties so we could get a bit of a breather.
Across town, and Paul Harrigan was straight into the chores, hanging out the tools of a champion. However, the hard work did have its rewards. He says wrapping up the series is unforgettable. Harrigan was also high in his praise for his hooker.
I know he's keeping a secret there, everyone knows.
After the x-rays today.
Yeah, x-rays today. Never worried about a cork and then all of a sudden get fired. I had some ice on my knee for starters because it was in a fair bit of pain, but then I started breaking out in shivers and shaking around and ended up having to go to the doctor's room and get put on a drip. They said I was dehydrated and
It's estimated 1 in 4 people suffer a mental disorder. At a special meeting in Newcastle today, television personality Trish Goddard, who is on a committee which advises the government on mental health, complimented the Hunter Institute of Mental Health for an innovative teaching program, letting people in the community come to terms with a serious problem. It's believed 3 students commit suicide in the Hunter each year because of the pressure of the HSC. If school counsellors can be advised earlier, lives can be saved. Casualties can be cut back in domestic violence cases. Trish got health issues to be brought into the public arena. She's had tragic first-hand experiences. Her sister, who was a schizophrenic, took her own life 5 years ago. Rescue services were called to the intersection of Jefferson and Fassifern Roads, Wakefield, soon after 3 this afternoon. The driver and passenger of this Ford Laser were pinned in their seats.
I was working at the front of my house, turned around, the sound of gravel and glass flying, and there was a car on its back.
The driver somehow lost control of the car, and when he tried to get it back onto the road, the vehicle flipped. Ambulance officers worked delicately to get the men out. They were taken to John Hunter Hospital suffering shock, but in a satisfactory condition. Ironically, the owners of the house on the corner of the crash are in the process of moving their home further back up their block to escape the traffic. Peter Ryan, NBN News. It was in the dying moments of the Knights' clash with Cronulla on the weekend. Hagan going in for a ball-and-all tackle on Sharks halfback Mitch Healy.
It was a situation where he actually caught the football in front of his face, and it would appear that I've hit him in the head, but I've actually made contact with the ball.
Hagan says the judiciary dealt with it in a few minutes. His great reputation in the game was preserved, and importantly, no fine or suspension. Meanwhile, the Knights have stepped up their campaign, calling for a fair go from referees. Hagan says all three grades at Newcastle are being penalised twice as much as their opposing teams. Hagan, Coach Waite and Mike Armstrong met with Director of the Refs Mick Stone last night.
We're not conceding that we're being victimised or anything. We just think that there are certain areas that we are obviously infringing on and the opposition are doing similar things and not being picked up for the same.
Hagan says it was a positive meeting for both parties. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
I asked him this morning why am I...
This is John Bennett. Come Monday night, his face will be recognised by thousands of teenagers around the country. John has one of the leading roles in the new Paradise Beach series. He plays Kirk Barsby, Ironman champion and Gold Coast beach stud. It's a long way from his upbringing in Newcastle, where he was school captain of Merewether High and went on to win the Model for Life competition.
He's always been very much of an extrovert and always attracted a lot of attention, and I think to some degree he sort of played on the type of personality that he had, so yes, acting has always sort of been something that he was after.
John's most devoted fan will always be his father Ted. He knows what John has gone through to reach this point in his life.
I think probably some of the trauma that he's had through his teenage years after losing his mum and also his brother in a car accident and also suffering himself physical injuries from the accident that killed his mum, I think he's got a depth of feeling and he's putting it into his part.
John not only has his father's Maori looks but also his love of entertaining.
I came to Australia in the early 60s and was involved in many of the that were going at that time, such as Bandstand, Sing 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 and the Brian Davies Show. So I have a musical background and I've sort of been involved in music most of my life.
So do you believe he's inherited some of that talent?
I think he's got more.
Paradise Beach begins Monday on NBN at 5:30. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
More than 300 delegates attend the synods each year to discuss the running of the church and future directions. This year there's a new bishop at the helm, Roger Hurft, who came here from New Zealand. Matters requiring attention, according to the bishop, include keeping the church up with the times by modernising the language used in sermons and making them more relevant to daily life.
I think that at this synod we've seen an openness, a relaxed atmosphere, a participation of people without losing the dignity of what we're on about.
The church also debated its future role in education, while already laying the administrative foundations for more Hunter grammar schools.
There already are, I think, proposals for at least 3 schools that will provide parents with a choice. And it's not moving into a holy huddle, but it's providing another aspect of education.
The synod also heard from the church's welfare wing, the Samaritans, of growing concern about poverty in the community. The Samaritans are critical of planned government tax cuts that could rob the public sector of badly needed relief funds. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
Defending champions wearing blue were up against Taormina High School in a repeat of last year's North Coast final. With injury sidelining 7 key players, Taormina was at a disadvantage, although the home side struck first with 2 penalty goals. Maxville levelled soon after, winger Darren Ward taking the penalty tap kick and surprising the retreating Taormina defence. Taormina showed it could move the ball around quickly though, lock forward Jamie Johnson juggling it before setting it down under the posts. Maxville's fast-moving attack started to show on the scoreboard, fullback Scott Kay stepping out to record another first-half try. The visitors continued to widen the margin after the break, this never-say-die effort by lock Reg Donovan contributing to the final 34-20 score. The Commonwealth Bank Cup will now see Maxville High face Lismore's Woodlawn College, the winners of the Northern Rivers final, in the series regional playoff.